Some time ago, I attended a very interesting lunch. It was of people I didn't know, and it was in a city down south. The MC said, if you introduce yourselves to each other around the table, then you can proceed to eat. We were all introducing ourselves, and the gentleman directly across from me was a tall African-American man whose name, as he said it, was distinctly Muslim. When we got around to me, I introduced myself, and I was the last guy, so we all started eating. And partway through the lunch, the gentleman who had that distinctly Muslim-sounding last name made eye contact with me and said, "I love your books," which was totally confusing to me, and he could tell it was. So he said, "Let's chat after lunch." And so I said, "Okay, let's do that." So after the lunch, we stepped off to the side, and he told me a story I'll never forget. He told me about growing up in a church that had some racial prejudice issues, so he and his family felt like they had to leave it. And he left God and Jesus Christ and the whole thing. But when he was in college, he was accepted and loved by some Muslims. And they just took him in, and so he became a Muslim. Later on in his life, he became very successful in his vocation, but he would wind up in a lot of social settings being the only person kind of standing off to one side, maybe because of his color, maybe because of his religion, but he was almost always off to the side in social settings until one night he was at a cocktail party for business purposes, and there were a group of white people standing off to one side. He was standing alone on the other side of the room, and one guy noticed him standing alone on the other side of the room and extricated himself from his little conversation group, and he walked all the way across the room, put his hand out, made the acquaintance, and started having a very easy and natural conversation. They met together for several weeks, both talking about Islam and Christianity, and one morning after that breakfast, the Muslim, instead of going to work, went home, dropped on his knees, and invited Jesus Christ into his life. Isn't God trying to change all of his children into walk across the room kind of children? People who look in social settings for the one standing off to the side. People who are aware throughout the course of their day that maybe there's someone they can have a conversation with. Maybe it won't lead anywhere. Maybe it will. Maybe God has a grand adventure planned if someone is willing to walk across.